So you have an original idea for your startup and you may be wondering what to do first, but luckily for you, regardless of what the business is or what its unique attributes you have, the steps you need to do first don't change from one business to the next. In this video, I'm going to take you through the typical life stages of very early stage businesses, i.e. how you go from idea to having enough initial traction that you can start scaling. So let's do it. There are three types of founders, and I write content for two of them. The three of them are A, a non-technology person who's worked in the industry for 20-ish years and sees a way to make that industry better and wants to give it a go. B, a non-technology person who has an interest or a passion or sees a way of building a business that allows an authentic community and following to congregate. Or C, a technology person who sees a gap in the market. I don't necessarily produce content for technology people, but you're welcome to stick around and see if there's anything good for you. Regardless of the type of founder you are, the general roadmap of what we're trying to do looks the same, and there's only one significant fork in the road. Everything up to that fork looks more or less the same for everyone. The fork of the road is whether or not you're going to try and get institutional investment or not, and you can conceptualize that as whether you're trying to go for aggressive growth or not. That's a very personal decision, and it's true to say that founders are not encouraged to reflect on personal natures of that decision, because people who talk about entrepreneurialism tend to amp up the idea that a business is only a proper business if you have millions in investment and hundreds of staff and you're out there moving fast and breaking things and hustling and going for massive growth like it's the only real purpose of meaning in our infinite cosmos. But if you're in your mid-40s and you're looking for a second career and you want to retire sooner or later, this being a very typical model for the first type of founder that I prefer to make content for, and some say that this is the most common type of founder full stop, you may find that all you want is a little £2 million, £4 million ARR annual recurring revenue business that books £500,000, £1 million profit per year that you can ultimately sell and retire, because wherever you're starting, 10 to 15 years of consistent effort can almost always get you there without having to rely on institutional investment. The only real reason to get investment is because you want growth to come in quicker and have a business that scales up to like £20 million or £40 million ARR and £5 million or £10 million book profit per year. And again, this is a personal decision in a subculture of particularly Western business values where modest thinking particularly is not encouraged. But as I said, the initial steps required to get to the fork in the road where you choose whether to get investment or not doesn't have any bearing on the first things you need to do in your business. So in this video, we're going to look at that first part, getting from our idea to a point where we have enough pieces put together that we can then decide if we want to get institutional investment or not, or whether we want to scale the business through cash flow based on the fact that we've actually got the business up to speed and trading. Although we're talking about a choice to get investment or not, you will need some money in order to fund any of this. You can't build a technology business with absolutely zero cash in the bank. The general flow of fundraising normally goes that you have FF&F, friends, families and followers, and all your own savings and or some personal income that you can divert into the business to bootstrap the cash flow. You then have seed capital, and usually this is provided by angel investors, and venture capital, and enough said about that, the better. FF&F is not classed as institutional investment, but the other two are, even angel investment as a form of private equity. So in this video, the sections we're going to go through are 1. The flywheel, what I think is the most helpful analogy to describe early stage startups. 2. Marketing 101, a quick grounding in an approach to marketing that's more likely to succeed. 3. Minimum viable products, the first version 1 product that you need to build. 4. Pilots, very quick word about getting your first version out there. And 5. Being investor ready, which is very different to being investment ready. 1. The flywheel. Although we're not focusing on necessarily needing institutional investment, it's useful to try and see our business through the eyes of an investor, because all things being equal, investors will only put money into ventures that they feel are working, and we want to make sure that our venture is working, so we can use investor sentiment as a benchmark or a useful proxy measure to know whether we're on the right track. You will hear investors talk about traction. Now, this is a helpful metaphor, but to be honest, it's not my favorite way of putting it. Traction talks to the idea of moving, and there's an implication there that you're moving in a forwards direction rather than a backwards direction, but the analogy that I like better is that of getting a flywheel up to speed. For those unfamiliar with the engineering concept of a flywheel, the principle is that you have a large disc with a lot of mass that takes a lot of energy to get started, but once it's started and spinning at speed, it takes a long time or a lot of force to stop it from spinning. And this is what you want with a business. You want to put a ton of energy into it to make it move, but once it's actually functioning, you want it to become self-sustaining and become difficult to stop. From an investor's perspective, the existence of a notional flywheel spinning away merrily strongly implies that the business will continue to grow and be profitable, which is what they are looking for. But that's what you want as well. You want the business to be growing and be profitable too. Now, this might seem obvious to state, but in order to get the flywheel up to speed, you need to be bringing in money by making sales. You also need to be bringing in more money than you're spending, because, to keep the analogy going, making a loss effectively slows the flywheel and brings it to a stop. After all, cash is king. For a technology business, the most common model for selling is to provide a service that is paid for by the customer on a recurring monthly basis. This approach is sort of the holy grail for technology businesses now, although maybe that's not such a great analogy because everybody does it and everybody can have it, which isn't the same as kind of a holy grail thing. Anyway, most founders seek to build their business on this model. This is usually referred to as software as a service or SaaS, but for me that term is so old and its meaning has got somewhat lost in the midst of time. Most software these days is sold on a monthly recurring subscription basis, but back in the olden days, software was usually sold on perpetual license. E.g., you might spend a few £1,000s on some software, but you'd have a license to use that software in perpetuity. The reason why the software industry moved to a monthly recurring basis is that rent seeking is more sustainable than selling outright. If you have 1,000 customers that are paying you £100 a month, that creates a consistent cash flow of £100,000 per month. If you sold the same amount in real terms, but perpetually, e.g. you sold 1,000 customers a one-off license for £2,400 each, which over 2 years amortizes to the same amount, you create a lumpy cash flow. And that means you end up in a feast and famine situation. You also create a business that if you have a functional recession going on, like you have now at the time of recording this, you can find a sudden drop in new sales, whereas if you have everyone on monthly recurring revenue, you are much more cushioned against structural issues within the broader economy. This fits neatly into the flywheel analogy we'll be looking at. Monthly recurring revenue is highly sympathetic with the flywheel model because if the economy is bad, you might start losing a few customers, but the flywheel keeps spinning and you keep trading and you can bring in new customers or you can do mitigating things to stop losing customers so much. Whereas if you're kind of doing this lumpy cash flow thing with these big ticket sales that are coming in every now and again, that can be highly sensitive to economic problems. Most people think of SaaS solutions as purely a business-to-business or B2B play, but actually you'll find the same rent-seeking recurring monthly behavior in business-to-consumer or B2C products. HelloFresh is a good example of this, where the business seeks to sell a subscription service, looking to turn something you might do once or twice into something you might do consistently for many years. You also have companies like Just Eat who want to try and create habits that result in creating weekly or monthly recurring activity. The phrase that you want to remember here, because you'll hear it a lot, is MRR or monthly recurring revenue, or its cousin ARR, annual recurring revenue. Although most SaaS businesses tend to think of their baseline management chunk as a month, not a year. Keeping an eye on whether monthly recurring revenue, i.e. MRR, is increasing tends to be a good metric to determine whether the business is growing. To get your flywheel up to speed, what you need to do is build a machine that is focused on increasing this MRR number month on month. The reason why I say this is a lot of founders don't come out the gate like this and end up faffing around before realizing that ultimately being able to point at the fact that you are getting MRR to increase month on month is what growth is. And investors want to see this is happening before they put in their money. And again, we're not saying you need institutional investment, but using that measure of sentiment is a helpful analog for the measures that we should be using in a business where we're not looking for institutional investment. Let's look then at how we get this flywheel spinning, and we're going to do this by using the tried and tested goal planning method, whereby you look at where you want to get to, look at where you are, and then you can derive the steps that go in the right direction. If you're starting from nothing, your direction of travel is not having a product to selling that product. To put it more colloquially, we need to build something to sell and know that we have some hope of being able to sell it in meaningful numbers. The steps you need to go through are A. Having a rough idea of what you think people would buy. B. Having a roughly put together product that you can put in front of people, and this is known as a minimum viable product or MVP. C. Operating a pilot project with at least one of your ideal customers. And D. Having a good enough marketing strategy that means you know how to sell what you've built. 2. Marketing 101. Coming on to the 4 stages of starting up, marketing underpins everything we're doing, so we need to tackle this first, even though we don't have anything to sell yet. I don't do content specifically on marketing, but authoring the kind of content that I do for early stage businesses, some marketing chat is unavoidable, and as such, I will give you a quick starter for 10 with 3 specific pointers. Firstly, marketing is much more difficult and much more important than most first-time founders think it is. The mistake that they make is that you only have a business if you're able to access your market, and this truism effectively dictates you have to build a marketing organization first, then wrap your operational delivery around the outside. Most people, especially founders from a tech background, will design the business with operational delivery at its core and then apply a light smear of marketing on the outside. This approach makes it very difficult to market your business. Secondly, marketing, whether it's B2B or B2C, is much easier if you center your approach on whatever transformation you want the customer to have. Looking at the desired transformation is a much more modern approach and a more effective approach that combines the older ideas of customer pains, i.e. the problem they want solved, and customer journey, i.e. how they got to where they are when you meet them and where they want to get to next. A very quick exercise that can solve this problem of transformations for you is to fill out the statement, I help blank to blank so that they can blank without blank. That one sentence, when filled out, is your one sentence marketing strategy, and hanging everything you do on it will short circuit most problems you have with your marketing. If you want to go a bit further than this, there's a really good book called The One-Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb, which I would recommend. Thirdly, consistency is everything, and you have to be consistent even if it doesn't look like you're getting results. That can be really difficult when you're spending out on marketing and not seeing it move, but eventually, if the offer is right and if the strategy is right, it will move. Whatever tactic you choose to do, you have to do it for a minimum of 6 months before you will see anything come back to you at all. Finally, what you do ultimately need is a very skilled, life stage appropriate and industry experienced specialist to help you with a proper marketing strategy, but they will love you forever if they come into your business and you've already started your marketing effort with the 3 things that we've just been through. I've started with marketing before talking about delivering a product, because the one thing that kills more startups than anything else is failing to find product market fit. You may have heard of this term, but it's just a way to say there is demand for what it is you're trying to supply, or put it more simply, you have something that people want to buy. If you design the product cold without thinking about how you will ultimately market it, you will find it much harder to find product market fit. Specifically, coming back to the I help blank statement above, if you have that statement in mind as you're designing the product, you will make better decisions about how that product should be put together, and you'll ultimately end up with a product that is compatible and sympathetic with that statement. 3. Minimum viable products. The next challenge you have is on a topic that I have a lot of content on my socials about, which is building your MVP or minimum viable product. I have a very strict philosophy about this. Firstly, your MVP has to be a real piece of software. There are people out there who'll tell you that you can fudge the first version of the product by using prototypes strung together using Google Sheets and no-code, low-code solutions. Some of those people who say that are trying to tell you something, although if you can't read between the lines there, anyone who tells you that is trying to sell you something. You have to think about this from the customer's perspective. You are asking them to get involved with your project and your business. They want something real. They need to actually use the real thing and have it work. You can't expect them to put time and energy into something that isn't ultimately what they're going to buy. Plus, if someone is following behind you with a real product whilst you're carrying some sort of naff prototype, guess what happens next? The second problem with MVPs is that non-technology founders almost by default end up having to give the project to an offshore software development agency, and in my experience, most people who do this suffer catastrophic results. Having spent a decent amount of time researching this over the past few years, this isn't really the software development agency's fault. They feel they have an offer that works for non-technology founders and will deliver that, but more often than not, that offer gives poor results. One key part of that is that agencies exist to augment existing technical teams, not to be an organization's only team, and this gets worse when you factor in the fact that startups are working in full-on experimentation mode and don't actually know what they're trying to build. The only safe way to do this really is to bring a technical person into the business. This in and of itself is complicated, but it does hugely ameliorate the risks around outsourcing. But I give away a lot of content for free on my socials and in my VIF program to help non-technology founders do this. One thing you should do, which will not be how the agency suggests working because they don't like working like this, is to pare the project down into smaller slices that you can give and deliver and test with prospects to see if it's converging on product market fit. If you do have in your mind that you're trying to converge on product market fit, and you should, and again, the I help blank do blank statement from before, and you're doing the project in smaller pieces, this will really help if you're not able to find or don't want to bring someone technical into the business early doors. And there's plenty of reasons why you don't want to do that early doors, so it's a bit of a difficult balancing act. Pilots. Once you've built your V1 MVP, you are now ready to build a pilot project. For B2B businesses, this typically means you find one business or organization that fits your ICP, ideal customer profile, and you get them to agree to use your solution on a real output for them. For B2C businesses, this looks more like a soft launch. We have to find a collection of people that fit your ICP and treatment like VIPs, giving them special behind-the-scenes treatment. An easy mistake to make with pilots is to assume that the pilot will confirm that you have already found product market fit. In reality, the pilot will show you where product market fit almost certainly lies, but you still need to get there. You will need to spend more money on the MVP to get from where you are when you run the pilot to the final thing you can sell. An analogy I use for this is flying a plane and doing some island hopping on some tropical islands. Once you've done the pilot, you will be on an island, but you'll need to fly off somewhere next to finish. And that means having some fuel, i.e. cash, available to do more development to get you where you need to go. Overall though, the point of completing a pilot and or doing any remedial work that might be required is that you have a product that people will probably spend money on, and it's time to start bringing the business up to scale. 5. Being investor ready. At this point in the proceedings, we are very close to being investor ready. The trick that the industry plays on founders, though, is that what people call investment ready isn't the same as being investor ready. The way that the entrepreneur community works in the UK is that it's become highly distorted over the 20 plus years since the dot-com boom. And there's this feeling that in order to be a proper startup, you need to be a certain type of founder, behave in a certain type of way. A big part of this is theatrics, particularly around fundraising, as this aspect of scaling and starting tech businesses has become one where you're only seen to have value with a founder if you're raising a certain amount of money. You're also supposed to do the raise in a certain way, in a way that both parodies and defines itself by looking like the Dragon's Den or the Shark Tank in the US, which is frankly a much better name because VCs are very sharky people. This has created an industry of people who will get you investment ready for a nominal fee, which usually involves just putting together your pitch deck and financials. And there are some people who are happy to be paid for providing that service, even though your business isn't actually investable. Investors at seed stage need to see the business actually function, and that's the purpose of the preceding sections in this video. We need to show that the idea that we have actually has product market fit, that we have a baseline amount of technology we can build on and use as a foundation for the next phase of growth, and that we have a sensible marketing strategy and we're able to find people who want the transformation that we're promising. Plus, we need enough credibility around delivery of that to convince them to actually give us some money. As I've said since the start of this video, getting to this point of being investor ready means that you can then go and get your pitch deck and your financials done and go out there and try and find the right institutional investors for you. Or you can be your own investor and get to the next stage of your startup by scaling your business through cash flow. Some YouTubers have sponsors, but I sponsor my own videos, so here's a message from me, my own sponsor. If you're a non-technology founder starting a technology business, I have a self-paced course on my website that takes you from the idea you have to getting a fully operational and profitable technology business startup. I'll show you in the course how to get your MVP built, how to find product market fit, how to get traction, and get from traction to either building your pitch deck and financials to get seed investment, or turning that traction into cash flow you need to get your startup to scale up. If you'd like to learn more, there's a link in the description, or just head to fractionalmatt.com/course. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.